As well, thanks so much for that. Now, Catholic bishops in Kenya now want the government to repeal the controversial Finance Act and the opposition to call off its 3-day anti-government protests that began today. In a press conference in Nairobi, the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops described the recently enacted Finance Act as a catalyst to the ongoing protests. The bishops faulted the protests as destructive and called on the opposition to seek alternative means of expressing their grievances. Well, let's get more from our very own Chemtai Goin.
Linking the controversial Finance Act to the uprising that has seen the country thrown into days of protests that have resulted in deaths, injuries, destruction and chaos, Catholic bishops called for the repealing of the law.
The recently enacted Finance Act places an unsustainable burden on already distressed citizens, especially those within the low-income bracket. We, therefore, ask the President to repeal the Finance Act and institute a process that will seek to achieve the same goals within the context of the current economic context.
The church leaders called on the opposition to suspend the protest, saying the standoff was going to put the country in further turmoil.
We have appealed to Azimio la Umoja to seek alternative strategy that would not hold the entire country hostage and lend itself to violence and destruction. The recent demonstration that we have taken place across the country recently have resulted in significant negative consequences, including injuries, property damage, trauma and the loss of lives.
They also called on President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga to climb down and stop their hardline stance and embrace dialogue.
Kenyans and our leaders must be willing to listen to each other for the sake of peace of our country. We condemn what we have seen simmering as ethnic-based violence spotted in some parts of our country.
According to the Catholic Church leaders, attempts have been made to broker a truce between the two leaders.
Given the circumstances of the week and what is going on happening today, we did not succeed meeting them face to face. However, we are ready, prepared. We have a system, we're just waiting for that openness. But we also do understand the stress they're going through at this particular moment.
They also want a resumption of the flopped bipartisan talks.
We demand the failed bipartisan talks should be resumed in a different context that brings on board the religious leaders and some eminent persons and bodies. We believe that there is no problem, however difficult, that cannot be resolved through dialogue. We must at all costs avoid the loss of lives. No further blood should be shed.
Appearing to hit out at government officials for chest thumping and failing to listen to the plight of Kenyans who are bearing the burden of the high cost of living, the bishops urge the government to be honest about the state of affairs to restore public trust.
We are particularly appalled by unbecoming, insulting, and inciting statements made by leaders. This is causing confusion among the population regarding the direction the country is taking.
Police and uniformed officers were also criticized for using excessive force.
We want to emphasize and express a firm stance against such acts of violence and abuse of power. Police have an obligation to deal with criminals disguised as demonstrators. Police cannot take advantage to brutalize innocent Kenyans. Such acts are unacceptable must not be tolerated under any circumstance.
The clerics proposed a consensus-building convention, bringing together religious leaders and multi-sectoral players to attempt to diagnose and identify what is ailing the country and the probable remedy to end the chaos.
It is crucial not to lose hope and succumb to despair. By working together and engaging in a constructive dialogue, Kenyans can collectively brainstorm, implement innovative approaches to tackle the socio-economic issues at hand.
Catholic faithful were also implored to hold special peace prayers this Sunday, even as they proposed a national day of prayer for all Kenyans. Meanwhile, human rights group Haki Africa has also expressed concern over reported incidents of more police shootings leading to loss of lives. With President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga seemingly caught in a battle of wits, a battle that has since resulted in days of protests and disruptions, the question is, who will blink first? Who will be the voice of reason? And will the two leaders heed to the heightened calls by not just religious leaders, but various interest groups to dialogue and sort out the issues that have been raised? Chemutai Goin, Citizen TV.